The basic premise is he's on fire. If anybody's played, we've back to the NBA Jam days, video game days. NBA Jam. If you made 3 baskets in a row without letting the other team score, you were on fire. So anybody that's made a couple shots in a row, they're on fire. So if you made 3, great albums in a row, we're counting that as on fire. So that's kind of the basic idea. They don't have to be completely front to back albums, but I tried to pick ones that were for the most part. There are some that are even 4 and 5, which is a whole different stratosphere. But 3 is harder than you think. I'm looking through some of the groups that I love and come back to regularly. I'm like, oh man, they kind of had a misstep here. They only had 2, and then they had 2 more, or they had 2, and then they had 3 more after that. But yeah, it's not the easiest feat to pull off.
And so. I think it was someone I think it was in the comments of our Instagram post, because we kind of put a teaser out there in the last week. I think it was there where someone made a good comment. It's like there are some bands that don't even have 3 total. So it's hard to even get 3 total, let alone in a row, because, like Tony said, there's a misstep in there, whether it's changing sound, changing fan base, label influence, all that. So to come
sophomore slump.
Sophomore slump. So to hit it 3 in a row, it's rare, and I really tried to pick 3 that are great.
Well, I'm gonna do my second one, and then I think we'll each do 2 tonight because we got plenty to do here. But I have, and this is a shout out to your sister Twan, because she had thrown out Third Eye Blind, but she had thrown out the first 3 records, and I disagree. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, Out of the Vein, Ursa Major, and then Dopamine. That 3-album run, I think, is their better 3-album run. As good as self-titled, Blue, and Out of the Vein are as a trio. Yeah. There are spots on Blue I get a little bored, and there are spots on self-titled I get a little bored. I'm not gonna lie, I love those albums. They're great albums. There's so many good songs on them. But for overall cohesiveness of an album, I think Out of the Vein, Ursa Major, and Dopamine, those 3 for me just they fit this for me. So Out of the Vein came out May 13th of 2003. Just had its birthday yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. 17 years old yesterday. So that's kind of crazy and timely for us. Key tracks for me on that: Blinded, Crystal Ballers, an all-time Third Eye Blind song. My Hit and Run is an all-time Third Eye Blind song. Can't Get Away. Great songs, right? And there's other ones too. Misfits is good. It's just a fun album. We all saw them last summer. I think, Twan, were you there?
I missed it. Had a wedding that day.
Yeah. So
I actually heard it. I heard it where I live. Right. You can hear it was an outdoor concert. You can hear it over the bay. So. Yeah,
it sits on this outdoor venue in Maine on the water called Thompson's Point, which opened a couple summers back, and it's an awesome spot for a summertime concert. And they played with Jimmy Eat World, and just a blast. It was early July, super hot. We'd had like a wicked hot stretch, and it was nasty thunderstorm happened like 3 hours before the show, and we're all like, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? But it finally, everything cleared out. It cooled off, and it was just a beautiful evening for Third Eye Blind and Jimmy Eat World. So I think they played Crystal Baller that night too, which is just awesome.
All right, I'm gonna interject real quick.
Yeah.
And the reason I've been smirking for the last 2 minutes, they were my next one. So we were gonna do 2 tonight. They were my next one. And you basically called out the 3 that I was gonna do: self-titled, Blue, and Out of the Vein.
Yeah.
So do your thing, and I'll just chime in a little bit at the end. We'll combine ours.
So my thought there is that those 2 albums aren't bad. They're the albums that got me into them. I mean, there's some great tracks on those, and you can get to those in a minute, but I like this run better for my purposes. So Ursa Major came out in 2009, August. Key tracks for me on that: Bonfire, Sharp Knife, Water Landing. But I mean, front to back, I listened to that album and just can't go wrong. Saw them on tour for that album in Portland at Merrill Auditorium, which is a very acoustically sound, awesome. There. You were there too? I didn't know you were there.
Yep.
So, I went with our mutual friend who used to work for a radio station locally, and we were together with a group of people, and he had just kind of split up with his significant other, and they had bought tickets together, and we were all at it. And he asked me, he's like, do you want to go backstage and meet him? And I was like, I mean, you guys are in a terrible mood, but I do. But we ended up not doing it. So I had a chance to meet him that night. Unfortunately, we didn't. Sorry, Rob. But yeah, the show itself was so cool. Twan, you can speak to that. It wasn't. I mean, that's a great spot for a concert because the acoustics in there are badass. But pretty awesome. And then Dopamine, which came out a couple summers back, June of 2015, front to back album for me. I listened to it fairly recently again. Not a bad track on there. Dopamine's probably one of my favorites. Everything is Easy is really good. Rites of Passage is an awesome Third Eye Blind song. Back to Zero is an awesome Third Eye Blind song, and as is Exiles. Those are kind of my key tracks for that one. But again, front to back, there's really not a bad song on there, and they're fun to hear live and just fun to throw on in the car and roll the windows down and just blast. So this was the three that I had thoughts on. Anything you guys can, you're going to have out of the vein thoughts, Twan, because you have them too.
Out of the vein, the three standout tracks for me, actually you mentioned, which was Blinded, Crystal Baller, and you mentioned Misfits as well. Those are, yeah, that album's classic because you got to remember, think about the bands in their era that came out right around that 97, like the Radio Rock. I mean, they're in a different league of these bands, but like the Smash Mouths, the Sugar Rays, like those bands, they're not supposed to put out two good albums, 3, 4, 5, you know? So it's just like, that still held up. So Out of the Vein still held up for me from that stretch. But actually, ironically, I got into that album late. I probably got into that album maybe 2 or 3 years after, because it came out in 03. I didn't get into it in 03. Where Self-Titled and Blue I got into at the time frame. And so, yeah, that's my thought on Out of the Vein. Now, Ursa Major could be their best album, I think.
Yeah.
It's top. Yep. Man, it's so tough.
It's tough. They have a 5-album stretch here, don't they? I mean, it's crazy.
So Third Eye Blind, they're like hidden in plain view. Like they're one of those bands that, again, we go back to like screw the genre, screw what the public perception is. The Third Eye Blind is a band that gets lobbed into that 90s one-hit wonder. But if you know, you know. Like they're classic. They're absolutely classic. And Ursa Major is a front to back. No doubt about it. Dopamine, I need to give another listen. I liked it, but I didn't listen to it enough.
I think I like it the best of these three, Dopamine. So maybe that's just because I listened to it most recently. But there's songs from Out of the Vein I like the best out of the ones that I mentioned too, like Crystal Baller and My Hit and Run and Misfits. And they're just, like you said, that's a perfect way to describe them. They are hidden in plain view. They've been around for 25 years or close to it. Everybody knows Semi-Charmed Life, which is an absolute classic of a song. Yeah. But people maybe don't know much else other than that, or how's it going to be and stuff from the early days. They don't listen, they haven't really paid attention, but they still make great music and still kill it live. Yeah, do you want to speak to some of those earlier albums, Twan?
Yeah, so Self-Titled comes out in 97, and I don't know what time, and we could probably look it up. I'm not sure what time of year it came out, so the reason I'm trying to think is I actually got this CD in my Easter basket, and my guess is it was 98, in my 98 Easter basket. So the album came out in 97. I got it in my Easter basket. And Semi-Charmed Life was popping, How's It Gonna Be, Jumper, but those aren't even the best songs. Graduate is an all-time song. God of Wine's an all-time song. Motorcycle Drive-By is so the album ends with Motorcycle Drive-By into God of Wine. Yeah, I mean, killer closeout, and then you get into Blue, and that closes with Slow Motion, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, just excellent. And Blue had the singles. It had Deep Inside of You, 10 Days Late, but it had Wounded, which was a great song.
Wounded's awesome.
And that was great. Yeah, that was on like a commercial, I remember too. But Slow Motion's classic. I will give it to you, Tone. When I was trying to compile this list, Blue gets a little sleepy, sleepy, but it's still. Is it truly great? I think it is.
Yeah.
I would agree with you. But that was the reason I went with the other run, just because there's just a couple points, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I could do it. I could absolutely make the case for it, but and you can make the case this is a 5-album run because all 5 albums are awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to give Dopamine another shot, and then Screamers is the latest one, which is
Screamers
great too.
great.
I mean, it's that's the thing. Is it great? Does it meet this great criteria? I don't know. But Ursa Major, goddamn, that I know every lyric to every song on that album.
Oh yeah, that's such a sing-along album for sure.
Bonfire.
Bonfire is amazing.
Sharp Knife. 1 in 10. I mean, it's just.
Yep. What do you think, Nate? Anything that sticks out to you with those?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right with you guys, and it's funny because I think the first 3 albums I loved, and I took a break from Third Eye Blind. I think they hadn't put out anything for a long time, and so Tone, you actually got me into Ursa Major, and it was like, oh, okay, they're back, and this album's sick, but it's that weird thing where like the 3-album run, you're into it and you think it's awesome, and you kind of like forget about it. And then if you hadn't got me into Ursa Major, I probably would have just been like, oh yeah, I checked out Third Eye Blind back in the day. I love those first 3 albums. I haven't really listened to them since. But then you got me back into them, and I'm like, yeah, they're still making amazing music. I guess it's primarily Stephen Jenkins for the most part, but yeah, I mean, he's an amazing songwriter. You know,
Yep.
He is almost classically trained. I know that he graduated like top of his class. So he's very, obviously he has the creative writing down.
I remember sophomore year of high school, and I think Twan, you were in my English class. Our English teacher claimed to have dated him in 7th grade.
Yep.
Well, it's one of those things. She was like, I used to date Stephen Jenkins, and you're like, oh, thinking it's like recent, but no, it's like when they were kids.
No, we were kids. Like, cool. Can you get him, call him and have him talk to us in English class? Like, that'd be cool.
So I've seen them a bunch of times, but one of the early times was, I'd have to look it up. It was maybe 04, 05 in Boston at the Hat Shell, which is on the Charles River.
Nice.
Outside.
I was at that show.
On Earth Day?
Yeah, oh my God.
And do you remember what happened during the set?
I remember his sound was, their sound was terrible for their set, because it was like them, it was President of the United States of America. Who else played that show? It was like a 90s run, like 90s lineup.
Well, the big thing that like sticks out more than anything is, so there's the Hat Shell, but then they had scaffolding on each side, and they had banners that covered the scaffolding, but they didn't have like slits in it for the air to get through, the wind to get through.
Well.
So they had these like vinyl banners, and the scaffolding fell into the crowd.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
What?
Like, I'm sure. Look it up. Looking up like 311, third Freudian slip. Maybe they have a 3-album run too. Third Eye Blind.
Actually.
Yeah. Third Eye Blind. Earth Day, Boston. Like, I'm sure there's an article on it. And
That's so crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone got injured, but that was like, I think it had to have been. It was definitely 04, 05. I want to say 04.
I was at that show. I don't remember that. I think I left early because I remember watching Third Eye Blind and being like, man, their sound is terrible right now, and ended up leaving the show early. But it was a stacked lineup. I remember that show in the Hat Shell.
I think we might have just showed up for them. I don't remember openers. But yeah, Third Eye Blind, great band. I'm glad they got love from. Actually, it sounds like all 3. Like Nate, they're a borderline 3-run band for you too.
Oh, totally. I'm huge into them, and it's so funny because speaking of bands you've seen the most, I would have to like count everything, but I think I've seen they're like one of those bands that I've seen a ton.
Yeah.
Like when I lived in New York City, I saw them every time they came through, and they came through a lot in Florida as well. And I would make sure to see them every time. It was just like, it's always a good show. They're a great band. He's a great singer. It's great songs. It's like a pop Beatles. Like every song is a sing-along song, and it's like a very positive experience. And another band that kind of gives you a snapshot of what it's like to be in somewhere like California back in the day, or even present. Like, I don't know, something about songs that paint a picture of like a life that you kind of like want to live. You're like, oh wow, it's cool to hear it through these songs. And 30 Day Blind is for sure that.
And just the lyrics, he paints a picture, like you said.
Mm-hmm. They always tell a story, and the funny thing to me is how upbeat Semi Charm Life is, but it's about doing drugs. Like it's just about
Hard
being
drugs.
down and doing crystal meth and like just some, and you know, I bumped up and took the hit that I was given, then I bumped again and I bumped again. Like it's not happy. It's not a happy song at all. How do I get back to that place?
Yeah. Slow Motion's a good example of that too. Slow Motion's a pretty dark song.
Yep.
I know the label wasn't too pleased about that.
Nah, screw the label.
Yeah, like Greg said, they were, you know, approved it. So
Yep.